imagine the omnipotent creator of the universe having like a full-blown panic attack.
Just completely losing it.
Yeah, exactly. Sweating, pacing the floorboards of heaven, and completely reliant on you not to mess up.
It's a pretty wild image, honestly.
It really is. And that is the exact theological landscape we are stepping into today. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
I'm really excited to get into this one.
Same. Because, it completely shatters that classic medieval painting most of us picture when we think of a religious text.
Oh, definitely.
Usually you have the divine up at the top, bathed in light, completely perfect, just utterly untouchable.
Right. Totally serene.
Yeah, serene. And then you have humanity down at the bottom, looking up, asking for things, or, maybe begging for forgiveness.
It's a very comfortable, very predictable one-way street of power.
Exactly.
And, we gravitate toward those visible, categorized power structures. Right?
For sure. It feels safe.
Yeah, a binary system where the creator is the absolute authority and the creation is the dependent. It makes logical sense. It is a comforting architecture for the universe.
Right.
But the text we are examining today dismantles that serene architecture entirely.
Yeah.
Our mission today is a masterclass in close reading.
Put on the reading glasses.
Exactly. We are putting a magnifying glass to a single, highly concentrated historical document, and we're reading it strictly as a philosophical and theological artifact.
No outside noise.
Right. We're putting aside all outside history and biography to just stare at the mechanics of the words on the page.
And the document we're looking at is a short prayer from May 23, 1956.
Just a few paragraphs.
Yeah, very brief. It was delivered by Reverend Sun Myung Moon, and it's titled, "Father, Please Bear with Our Unworthiness."
Which sounds completely normal.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this, because if you just glance at the title, it sounds exactly like standard operating procedure for a prayer.
Just a traditional plea for forgiveness.
Right. But the moment you look at the opening lines, the power dynamics between humanity and the divine become, honestly, really startling.
It happens so fast.
It really does.
Yeah.
The speaker asks that the congregation be allowed to represent the glory of God, but then immediately pivots to ask that they be allowed to know God's, quote, deliberations and dilemmas.
Wow.
And to experience God's anxious mind.
What's fascinating here is the sheer philosophical weight of those two specific phrases,
The dilemmas and the anxious mind.
Exactly. If we break down the definition of a dilemma, it is not simply a problem.
Right. A problem is just something you solve.
Exactly. A problem has a solution, even if it is, really difficult to achieve. But a dilemma is a situation in which a difficult choice has to be made between two or more alternatives, especially equally undesirable ones.
Like being stuck between a rock and a hard place.
It implies being cornered. So, to attribute a dilemma to an omnipotent being is to suggest that the creator of the universe is currently stuck in a corner with no clear, painless way out.
Which is just a mind-blowing concept for an all-powerful being.
Totally.
And then, adding the phrase anxious mind on top of that. Anxiety at its core is a future-focused fear, right?
Yes, the fear of what's coming.
It is the dread of an uncertain outcome. But if a being is truly all-knowing, there should be no uncertainty.
And therefore no anxiety.
Exactly. So, attributing an anxious mind to the divine means this text is portraying a God who does not actually know how the story ends.
The future is unwritten.
Right. And that lack of control is actively causing the deity psychological distress. It brings this massive cosmic concept crashing down to a very relatable human level.
It really creates a demand for radical empathy.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Because, if you think about it, the prayer isn't asking the deity to stoop down and comfort the humans. It is asking the humans to rise up and shoulder the emotional burden of the deity.
Wow. Yeah.
The congregation is being asked to feel the physiological weight of cosmic anxiety.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, because it's like that pivotal, shocking moment in childhood when you realize your parents aren't invincible superheroes.
Oh, that is a perfect analogy.
You know what I mean? You grow up assuming they know everything, they can fix anything, they never get scared.
They're bulletproof.
Exactly. And then one day, you catch them crying at the kitchen table.
Or you hear them stressing out over how they're going to pay the mortgage.
Right. And suddenly, they aren't gods anymore. They are vulnerable. And their vulnerability shifts a terrifying amount of emotional responsibility onto you.
Because now you have to worry about them.
Yes. Or, to scale it up even more, it's like realizing The billionaire CEO of a massive multinational conglomerate is actually lying awake at 3 a.m.
Sweating through their sheets.
Yeah, just completely terrified because the entire survival of their empire relies on, like, a handful of entry-level employees showing up and doing their jobs correctly.
Right. And if the creator of the universe is pacing the floorboards like that panicked CEO, we really have to look at what is breaking the machine.
What's causing the panic?
Exactly. And the text points the finger directly at a structural flaw in the universe itself. The anxiety comes from the fact that God is fundamentally trapped by a reliance on humanity.
Trapped by us.
Yeah. The prayer explicitly states, "We know that you are in a position where you cannot help but believe in these insignificant beings."
Cannot help but believe.
That phrasing is crucial. It is not a benevolent choice.
It's not like God is just being nice.
Right. It's a compulsion. It is a structural necessity built into the very fabric of their theology.
And the text drives that point home even harder just a few lines later.
Yeah.
It states, "We know that you are in a position where you cannot help but carry out your works through them."
Carry out your works through them.
Yeah. That sounds like heaven is completely paralyzed without human action.
Utterly paralyzed.
It describes this incredibly fragile mutual dependence where the divine might have, the grand vision, the ultimate blueprint.
New architectural plans.
Right, but entirely lacks the physical, earthly means to actually execute it without us.
The mechanics of this theological trap are absolute.
Yeah.
Later in the prayer, the text reinforces this again by saying, "Up until today, heaven has been in a position where it must believe us, believe in, and establish us."
Must believe.
That word must completely locks the deity into this relationship. God is tethered to humanity's incompetence, unable to walk away, unable to find another workforce.
So there is no other workforce.
Exactly,
Okay.
because humans are the only available vehicles for the work.
Okay, I have to push back a little on the underlying logic of the text right there, though.
Oh, go for it.
Because the speaker uses the phrase, insignificant beings.
Right.
But if we follow the power dynamic they just established, how can humans possibly be insignificant?
That's a really fair question.
Right. If the ultimate creator of the universe is fundamentally paralyzed, just completely unable to carry out their own work without you, you aren't insignificant at all.
You're essential.
You are the absolute linchpin to the entire operation. It just feels like a massive contradiction to call humans insignificant while basically handing them the keys to the universe.
I see what you mean.
I mean, think about a group project in school. You might be the smartest student with a 4.0 GPA, but the teacher decides your final grade is based entirely on 3 other students who never show up.
Oh, the absolute worst.
Right. And they keep losing the glue sticks or whatever. You, the absolute genius, are at their mercy. So in that scenario, those slacking students are the most significant variable in your life.
They hold all the power.
Exactly.
But I think if you look at it from another angle, think about insignificance in terms of physical scale versus functional utility.
That's right, scale versus utility.
Yeah. Consider a single specialized screw deep inside the engine of a commercial airplane.
Right.
Compared to the massive wingspan, the thousands of gallons of jet fuel, the incredibly complex navigation computers that screw is physically insignificant.
It's just a tiny piece of metal.
Exactly. It is tiny, it's cheap, and it's totally unremarkable. Yet, if that specific screw snaps, the engine tears itself apart and the entire plane goes down.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
God is the airplane, humanity is the screw. The text is leaning into that exact tension. You are small, you are flawed, you are physically unremarkable, but functionally, the fate of the absolute highest power rests entirely on your structural integrity.
That distinction between scale and utility really clarifies things. It clarifies the sort of psychological crucible this text is building for the listener.
Crucible is a great word for it.
Because it maximizes the sense of guilt and responsibility simultaneously.
Yeah.
You are constantly reminded of your unworthiness, your smallness, while being told that if you break, you literally bring down heaven with you.
Which forces the believer into this hypervigilant state of existence.
You'd have to be.
And the pressure of that hypervigilance is magnified exponentially when the text introduces the timeline of this mutual dependence.
Right, the timeline.
Because this isn't, recent headache for the divine.
No, not at all.
The prayer states, Your heartbreaking situation formed throughout 6,000 years has continued until today.
6,000 years of heartbreak. And then the speaker looks directly at God and says, when we consider your history of lamentation, which has continued until today, and consider that today we ourselves are the very source of your lamentations, we ask you to please bear with us.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the scope of the anxiety we discussed earlier just explodes outward.
It really does.
This text takes a deeply personal, localized feeling of unworthiness. You know, like the everyday guilt a person might feel for a personal failing.
Like telling a lie or losing your temper.
Right. It takes that and scales it up to a macro-historical timeline. The specific reference to 6,000 years functions as a biblical timeline of human existence stretching all the way back to the Genesis creation narrative.
Back to the very beginning.
Exactly. The speaker isn't apologizing for what the congregation did wrong on a Tuesday in 1956. The prayer becomes a cosmic apology on behalf of the entire human species.
So what does this all mean for the person sitting in the pew? The psychological weight of internalizing that is just staggering.
It's immense.
I mean, put yourself in the shoes of someone standing in that room, actively praying these words. How do you function in your daily life when your sense of self is wired to that kind of historical burden?
It would be tough.
If you mess up at work or you lose your temper with your family, you aren't just a flawed person making a mistake.
No, you're so much more than that.
You look in the mirror and you see the living embodiment, the direct continuation of a 6,000-year streak of divine heartbreak.
That's a heavy mirror to look into.
It seems like viewing yourself as the literal source of the Creator's lamentations would be completely paralyzing. Like the guilt would just crush any motivation to act.
It absolutely would be paralyzing if it ended there.
Right.
But this specific framing is actually a highly mobilizing rhetorical strategy.
Mobilizing. How so?
Well, it operates on a duality. Yes, you are the source of a 6,000-year disappointment, which induces profound guilt. But inversely, it elevates your daily mundane life to supreme cosmic importance.
Okay, I'm following you.
If your failures cause the divine to lament, then logically, your successes are the only things capable of ending that 6 millennia streak of misery.
Oh, wow.
It turns every single action you take, how you treat a neighbor, how you perform your job, into part of a grand historical drama. You aren't just trying to be a good person.
Bro.
You are actively deciding whether to prolong or resolve the trauma of the universe.
That's huge. So it weaponizes the guilt into motivation.
Precisely.
It creates a scenario where the only way to escape the crushing weight of the past is to fix the future.
You have to act.
Right. And that transitions us into how the speaker proposes to actually break this endless cycle of disappointment.
Because they don't just stay in that guilt.
No, they don't just wallow in the unworthiness. They offer a highly specific solution. And the language they use to describe this ultimate offering evolves dramatically over the course of the final paragraphs.
The language shift is really the key to the whole thing.
It really is. They start by asking God to take us as sacrifices proper for you to accept.
Right.
But by the very end of the prayer, they are asking God to make us into the realizations of the life and the idea you desired, and finally, to make them into roots of life which can give you joy.
The linguistic evolution from sacrifice to roots of life represents a complete restructuring of how humanity interacts with the divine.
Complete 180.
Let's look at the mechanics of a sacrifice first. It is an ancient, very passive concept. Take us as sacrifices proper.
Yeah.
A sacrifice is an object placed on an altar. It is acted upon by an outside force. It is fundamentally about subtraction.
Subtraction, right.
A life is given up, something is destroyed or burned away to pay a debt or to appease anger. It implies a dying to the self, a state of profound passivity.
You're just lying there. But the text refuses to leave the believer in that passive state on the altar. It pushes them into a highly generative biological state.
Biological, yes.
Because a root is the exact opposite of a dead sacrifice. A root is alive. It is an engine of growth.
It's doing work.
Yeah, it pulls nutrients from the surrounding soil. It anchors a massive structure against the wind. It actively gives birth to branches and leaves and fruit.
Right.
It is an addition to the world, not a subtraction.
And that means the ultimate goal outlined in this prayer isn't simply to be forgiven for the past 6,000 years.
It's not just a clean slate.
Right. It isn't just about wiping the slate clean and resetting the cosmic scales to zero. It is an ontological transformation.
A total change in being.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The speaker is demanding that humanity be fundamentally transformed from being the passive source of God's anxiety into becoming the active, living engine of God's joy.
The engine of joy.
The power dynamic shifts yet again. If humans are the roots of life, they are now the foundational infrastructure that sustains the divine.
The level of commitment required to make that shift from a passive sacrifice to an active root is just extreme.
It asks for everything.
It really does.
Yeah.
The speaker says things like, allow us to become those who can give up our lives for you and can honestly offer our daily lives to you.
Total surrender.
Yeah, and when you pair that total surrender with the concept of becoming a root of life, it makes me think about generational debt.
Oh, generational debt. How so?
Okay, imagine a family that has been trapped in crushing financial debt for centuries, right? It has just ruined generation after generation.
Right.
The person praying here isn't just walking into the cosmic bank and asking the manager to forgive the debt so they can walk away with a zero balance.
No.
They are asking for something much wilder. They're asking to be transformed into the bank itself.
Oh, that's brilliant.
They want to become the generative financial instrument so they can start actively pumping out new wealth to pay off the arrears and enrich the bank.
To create the value.
Exactly. They don't just want to be the sacrifice that clears the red ink. They want to be the root that generates the profit.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanical shift the text is attempting here.
That's a huge leap.
The believer is asking to change their fundamental function in the universe. And if we look closely at that final phrase, we earnestly hope and desire that you will make us into roots of life which can give you joy, we see the final piece of the theological puzzle lock into place.
The joy piece.
Yes. The explicit goal of giving joy implies that the divine is currently lacking it.
Wow. Yeah, it does.
Once again, it reaffirms that the deity is incomplete without human success. The entire text is an elaborate subversion of expectations.
Totally upside down.
It uses the traditional, familiar vocabulary of religious submission words like unworthiness, faults, lamentations, and sacrifices.
All the classics.
Right. But it uses them to construct a hidden architecture where humanity is actually the indispensable driving force of cosmic history.
It is crazy to think it takes less than 300 words. Just a few short paragraphs from 1956 to completely re-engineer the universe's power dynamics.
It's incredibly dense.
Yeah. We started with what looked like a standard plea for a perfect God to forgive a flawed humanity.
A very normal setup.
Right. But from there, we uncovered an anxious, pacing deity, basically paralyzed and trapped by a compulsive reliance on its own creation.
We saw the airplane screw.
Exactly. We explored the crushing psychological weight of carrying 6,000 years of cosmic disappointment and finally arrived at a demand for humanity to fundamentally transform from dead sacrifices into the living, breathing roots of the universe's joy.
The depth we found here really highlights the vital importance of deeply analyzing the foundational documents of any philosophy, theology, or ideology.
You really have to dig in.
You do. A single word choice like anxious mind, or the deliberate tension between human insignificance and divine dependence, it can completely redefine the reality a text is trying to build.
And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive.
This was a fun one.
It really was. And whether you agree with the theology we discussed today or not, this text serves as a brilliant reminder to you, our listener, to always look closer at the things you read.
Read the fine print.
Always read the fine print. Don't just skim the surface or assume you know what a document says just based on its title. The words hiding in the fine print, the subtle shifts in language from passive to active, can completely change who holds the power in the narrative.
So true.
We promised you a masterclass in close reading, and hopefully this microscopic analysis delivered on that promise, revealing a startlingly unconventional relationship between the creator and the created.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over on your own.
Oh, lay it on us.
We've spent this entire time analyzing a text that claims humanity is utterly unworthy, flawed, and the absolute source of historical lamentation.
Right.
Yet this same text insists that a perfect divine being's ultimate joy, success, and relief from anxiety are entirely dependent on the physical actions of those highly imperfect humans.
The ultimate paradox.
Exactly.
Right.
And this raises a critical question about the nature of hierarchy itself.
Hmm.
If the creator cannot succeed, cannot find joy, and cannot escape its own panic without the flawless performance of its creation,
Yeah.
in the end, who is actually holding the true power in that relationship?